characters are doing all this to themselves. Because to believe that Lara Croft is that unique, is that special, that fantastic, that edgy, then you better see the person do it, you know?
You've got to keep it fresh, keep it new, otherwise we'll get you can't do the same thing twice.
I think last time it was just too easy. So many of the fights were too easy for me.
You know, she wants to get involved with everything, has opinion about everything. And so it was good that we knew to, you know, pass certain things through her, and really sometimes you need to rein her back because she wanted to do everything, and obviously insurance-wise, she's not allowed to.
It's not enough just to have a good story. Angelina had a list of things that she wanted to do in the film. New skills she wanted to learn, new locations she wanted to go to, and some kind of new combat she wanted to experience. She wanted to ride a horse. She wanted to have an underwater sequence. So how do you work those things into the story and make them seem organic? And one of the ways you do that is by having an actor like her who you are inspired to write for.
We've all seen many fights in movies, and you don't want to repeat yourself. No one do you want to repeat other fights you've seen in other movies, and so you have to come up with something new.
Training at first was really her putting on weight, and then we need to just build up just her stamina, so to speak, because she'd just been doing this famine-type relief worker film, and so she gets into the parts, and so she was quite weak at first.
In my life, I normally, especially now with Maddox, I don't have I'll do running or I'll do a bit of boxing, but mainly just running around after a kid. Anybody who has one knows that that's enough.
My name's Ed Chow. I actually teach Taekwondo, and I teach members of the England team and the British coach.
We did a lot of boxing last time, and I just think certain things we haven't seen and things that are fun to train because you haven't done yet. So. But I think it's beautiful to see.
And these are all obviously martial arts techniques, but more Taekwondo based, with the punching and the kicking.
One of my enemies in the film is about 6'5". So I'm trying to get my foot to his head. We did some kicking last time and some, but I never really spent a lot of time just focusing on trying to understand the lines of the body and balance and height and just training as much as possible. I think the fights are more epic. I just think everything's bigger and more thought out. Everybody, I think, tried to one-up what they did last time.
Stick fighting. It was really just to show her versatility in that, you know, she does all these different things.
And it was, at first, it was going to be fencing because we knew she would have fenced because of the way she was brought up. But because of the Bond films and because of we'd seen fencing, and so we thought, well, what would she be more? And we know she's into certain other cultures and other forms of training.
Lara is basically an expert with all weapons, so we had to get something where she is just amazing. And the butler is very traditional. So he can use the weapon very well, because obviously he trains with Lara, but not the flashy side. He's still very traditional-wise. And we kind of put the moves together. And then when you get the actual actors starting to do it, they put their little bits of acting and they get their characters to it. I had 3 kind of flashy moves throughout this fight that were the first things we thought we'd train her, that way then she's got more time on them. I think I had about 5 minutes with her one day, and she picked them up like that. So it kind of showed me up a bit.
She looked great doing it, and she learnt it very well. Very, very good at learning tricky moves. I mean, she'd probably be a really good dancer.
1, 2, double block.
I didn't know anything about it. I'd seen it done before, and I always was fascinated. I think it's an amazing thing to be able to pick up something as simple as that and use it as a weapon. I think that's a great skill to have.
When we do this in a Korean style, we're using the long one, which is a bow staff, and the small ones are Filipino sticks. And throughout the fight, what it is that she gets angry and it becomes the 2 sticks, she snaps it. So we kind of got a gist of like 2 different weapons in one fight, which is really good.
Kendo is such a cool thing with all the gear that ended up on Hillary, and I decided to be tough and not wear any gear and got wrapped a few times. But it was great to train with him, and it was really fun. That was a really fun part of it, and it's a great skill to learn. I think I'll keep that one up.
Sorry. And we'll read thousands.
They had me in LA, kind of getting wetsuits and practice jet skis and things like that. I kept telling them to find things that look hard that are very easy, not things that look kind of easy that are really, really hard.
Roll camera, here we go.
He had a world-class jet skier with her. It wasn't just anyone just teaching her just to jet ski. She has to look really, really good. We were trying to teach her the various tricks that the professionals do.
It's really hard to stand up on that thing. You should try it. It's really hard. And she really jumps the wave, and she doesn't, she's not afraid to fall down and do it again over and over when necessary with a different camera angle. She's great at it.
That's your baby there. That's Atos. That is his double. That's Monkey.
Is that the side saddle? No.
Side saddle is over there. Maybe we start to ride maybe first.
She'd ridden before, but then we threw a spanner in the works by asking her to ride side saddle, which, is difficult anyway. And then she had to fire a gun, and it's a heavy gun, and spin a gun.
Actually, I was very surprised because I don't know when I got asked, to give a riding lesson. I don't know what I was expecting. She could have been a fantastic rider, or she could have been. She started, and she really wants to learn, and she's physically very able. She got already the right seat, and she always wants to go one forward. Stride. Can I counter? Can I ride side saddle? And up to now, it's very good.
Sure, I was gonna do it all at once.
She's riding along, spinning a gun, reloading it, firing at various targets. You have to take things slowly, but obviously, at the end of the day, when someone is riding, if she falls off, she could hurt herself.
This is one of the beginning of injuries. This is a rifle shell in the eye from horseback. I pumped the shotgun, and the shell came into my eye. He wasn't completely broken in, so he still had that, which I loved, but he still had that, you're not going to tell me where to go, I'm going that way. And hit a lot of fire in him. So sometimes, like when he tried to knock me off into the bushes, because the gunshots, you have to find a horse that's comfortable with somebody riding side saddle, but also comfortable with helicopters, but also comfortable with a shotgun spinning on it. And you can't blame the horse for having enough.
You always have to make it better, or really push more the boundaries. You set the standard on the first one, and now you have to take it further.
There's all so much to be thought out, which is great, but then when you pull it off, you're happy, and then hopefully it looks like nothing on screen. Exactly, it looks just natural.
As with any movie of the Tomb Raider type, it's all a challenge from start to finish because it's all unique. It all kind of happens on the page, and then we have to make it work in reality. But one of the vehicles that was used in the film was a Rubicon Jeep. Lara Croft's entry to Africa was by parachute into the back of this Jeep. So what we did was we spoke to the design guys over at Jeep, and we kind of manipulated some of their designs. Because the vehicle was moving, we had to make sure that there was enough room in the back that would allow the parachute into the vehicle, because we actually did that for real.
Lara, welcome back.
A lot of the real weapons are standard off-the-shelf weapons that you buy, and then we might alter them to look slightly different. This is the weapon you had in the last film,
right,
which is black over, stainless steel over black. But we understand there's like to have a colour change.
I'm a girl. They match my outfit now. left and the right because she has to use two all the time. You had to invent this.
We had to
build a left-handed.
Ambidextrous release. Well, this is a really lightweight one, based on the U.S. Marine.
The silent military. It's very sexy.
Nice.
It's probably the biggest responsibility for the whole film is making sure that there are no accidents on set. Angelina had training on Tomb Raider 1, so I didn't have to instruct her at all. A number of the other actors had to be trained in the use of the weapon to make them look as though they knew how to do it, and also, again, to make sure they were safe on set with the crew and the other actors around them. We researched an underwater gun that the company's developed for special operations in the 70s. Has 5 barrels, fires a steel dart, and can be fired on the surface.
I've got a military vehicle in that we put in snow colours, and it's Lara's entrance to her first meeting with Jerry. And he realised that Lara had to get into this vehicle, and this was an armoured car, and it didn't have any conventional doors, so you know, the day before we had to cut a door in the side of it for the movie. I can hear the military boys out there going, that wasn't like that. Once we've built these vehicles and we actually get them out on location, we obviously have to maintain them very much like a race team, actually. So we have a mobile workshop. I need to make sure that not only can we build them, that we can also keep them on the road or in the air in most of the case with this bike.
That's where you get the bruises. He showed me his bruises. We're all sporting them. Well, you can just cut to the film where I finally mastered it.
Special request from Angelina.
My fantasy.
Secret.
Fantasy weapons.
So that'll go in up there. It's a gun from America, a little sort of handbag self-defense weapon.
It's for the lady's purse.
Everything lost is meant to be found.
Stand by for rehearsal, guys. Stand by.
Let's go.
Dry for wet sequence in the film is where we have an underwater sequence where Angelina, Lara, is going down to the lunar temple, which is beneath the sea. To get down there, her and her 2 friends go on these weird underwater bikes. And obviously, logistically, taking Angelina and the actors underwater was always going to prove a bit of a problem. So Steve Begg, the visual effects supervisor, came up with this, trying to do it dry for wet, where you recreate the look as if it is underwater, but actually you're not, you're on a stage.
The sequence opens with a real wet for wet start. But unfortunately, we found out that the bikes were a bit ungainly. So we were lucky at like 30 takes to get one good take where one or other of the bikes didn't suddenly careen out of control. So I think we actually saved them a hell of a lot of aggro by going with the dry for wet approach.
I know the stunt boys had some games trying to make those work. The first time I really had time to play with those in the water was in Greece, so 2 weeks before we were shooting.
I had a feeling using this, which is basically an old-fashioned technique where you smoke up a stage and you light it appropriately so it looks like an underwater environment. And I thought using the older techniques and allying it with CGI, we could create a convincing underwater environment. So very early on, in fact, before we had a director appointed, I shot a test to convince everyone that it could be done. We managed to get a small rocky set and some real wet bikes, cut the propellers off them, suspended them on wires and basically flew them through this smoky environment. And the producers bought it, and it became a major sequence in the opening of the film.
You have 2 switches. One is for your fan blades on the right side, and the left side is for the lights. So many layers in that shot. It's like massive. But they all add up to this incredible new environment, which I think looks incredibly real.
Okay, reset, lights off, fans off.
When you shoot really underwater, it never looks like really underwater. And I always had problems with that. You never can put fish in. Fish, the moment you're underwater with a camera, fish are gone. Forget about the fish. The water gets very, very blurry, and you barely can see the actors.
Chris Cradle and his guys basically created 3 overhead tracks on one of the stages at Pinewood using computer-controlled winches. They then flew these bikes across the stage with the actors on board. And then with, as I say, a smoky, a foggy type environment, we basically shot them as if they were actually underwater.
It was like being on a ride, and it feels like you've got your own amusement park. But at the same time, I think it was painful, mainly for the boys.
The footage is then cut. It was then given to the effects house, and their primary job was to, first of all, remove the wires convincingly, which was a task in itself, and then apply to the image using track technology all sorts of elements that you see in an underwater environment, such as seaweed, particulate matter, and fish. And the real deal was getting the mix just right, so it didn't look too contrived.
And I think that the whole underwater sequence, as it is put together now, it looks more underwater than you can possibly imagine, because you see all the things that you imagine to see there. You could never, ever do that in a real tank.
After the sequence in the lunar temple, she has to escape from the collapsing structure. She then encounters a shark that had stalked her early in the sequence. And being Lara Croft, she karate punches it in the nose, stuns it, and then hitches a ride using its dorsal fin to the surface. Because she was free floating, this couldn't be done using the dry for wet techniques. It had to be shot in a contained blue screen underwater environment, and we were lucky to have a 60 by 40 tank constructed for us. She was actually pulled through the water using, once again, one of Chris Cradle's wire rigs. And we had a rough dorsal fin shape, which towed her and a stunt double through water, which we then replaced with a CG shark.
I was thinking about something a little faster.
The other major visual effects sequence is where she basically uses a stealth re-entry pod.
Of course, you wouldn't be Lara Croft. You wouldn't get there in any normal way. He has to get there fast. And he made it this incredible trip that he dropped a pod from outer space.
This we realized primarily with CG effects. The environments were actually quite interesting, that the Chinese environments she crashes in, as they were actually shot in Wales.
The pod crashes into a cliff and then does this classic sort of Donald Campbell Bluebird crash and wipe out. Interesting shot because almost the entire shot is digital. We have digital matte painting, surrounds, digital water. The only elements that really actually are live action are these splash elements here. We fire these big chunks of metal into the water. It's the most fun I've had in a day for ages, and you can be left with one last bit in there. They seem to match up with the animation so well. So the last time you see the pod before it finally vanishes is actually a live action lump of car that we fired into the paddock tank.
The Shadow Guardians are these supernatural monster characters that inhabit this primeval petrified forest that surrounds the last tomb. And they're basically one of the final barriers you have to go through.
It's a continuation of a sequence that we shot in Africa in a place called Hell's Gate. And you come through a gorge and turn a corner, and then you're onto the stage.
The petrified forest was another huge sequence, and we needed a whole bone stage for that. It's one of the biggest stages in the world.
We're now in what they call the petrified forest, and that's on what they call the James Bond stage. And that seems huge, and it's just all these trees. And it has been completely petrified, and it's a huge space.
To create like a forest that looks real and that is at the same time feels like it's petrified, all the trees had to be man-made, handmade by an artist to really make it look like real trees, like real petrified wood stick. And it really looks like you come into a very strange, surreal world where the shadow guardians might live, and where everything is always moving. There's nothing, nothing is what it seems it is.
It's an amazing place, specifically built to support the stunt, to support the special effect, to give the shooting company a method in which to pull off an incredible sequence with a lot of technologies involved.
So you have to really know exactly what you're going to do with the visual effects in mind. That whole idea of the moving lights, it's like, that was a big job. It's like how I always can create shadows all the time, non-stop in the set. A lot of them are real shadows that we created by having this enormous tracks of lights that through every scene, every shot kept moving, throughout the set. But then that would have to match the visual effects later, because those shadows, that's ultimately where the shadow guardians come out of.
These trees back here are all digitally matte painted, and so we had to adding additional shadows in there to keep the movement flowing through the whole painting.
And so we had to make it in a way that it would feel very natural that those creatures would come out of it, and that the shadow actually, so that when the creatures come out and they would move back in the tree, the shadow just continues. It is just another part.
They start for shadows, and there's this point where they have to go from being a flat moving shadow on the surface to being sort of leaping out.
These characters are realised entirely using CG. We had basically nothing on the set to represent them for various reasons, but all the interaction and what have you with the various soldiers coordinated by Simon Crane using various wire rigs and what have you, yanking the stuntmen around the set. Later on in post, we animated the characters in sync with, or in sympathy with, the various background actions. And I think ultimately the sequence is quite dynamic.
It's got a variety of elements to it, like sometimes the shadow warriors or guardians, as they're now called, are just shadows, so you don't notice them, and they're just very subtle, creeping through shots. And sometimes there's nothing, there's a little bit of dust might fall off. So what we have to do is add a live action element to a live action play, and the days weren't so CG labor intensive. And other shots, you've got a full, big, 100% physical monster, full screen, dripping dust and cold breath and stabbing actors.
It's relatively dark, but when you see a glimpse of it, it's like really scary like hell. And it has like massive power. It's like it lifts you up and throws you against the wall like you're paper.
Holy shit!
I think that the production designer and the whole visual effects crew we did a fantastic job in achieving this and making it look so real.
We go from the dry for wet sequence, which is underwater, to the lunar temple destruction, which is a huge interior, to a wet for wet shark ride in a tank environment where she's recovered by a submarine, which is a CG environment, to Fringe of Space, where she drops down using this re-entry vehicle into China. And then into Africa with various matte paintings and petrified forests and various creatures that she encounters there. Quite a broad spectrum of unusual sets and environments that we had to add our visual effects to.
Lara Croft is like a male action figure. The way she's treated in the films is very kind of straight ahead. There are no kind of female tricks played by her. If she needs to punch you in the face, she will just punch you in the face. The challenge is to try to find proper tone for her character and not kind of go too far overboard with that strong side of her and still leave some room. There's also a tremendous amount of mystery in the film. Jan has done a beautiful job of shooting it, so there's some big, scopy landscapes. You kind of have to draw on everything you know in order to follow the range of the picture. All right, should we try this? Let's start. I came onto this situation quite late in the process, so it was well beyond the script state. It was very close to a final edit, although that is also going on now. So literally, I saw this film 5 weeks ago, and I got it 4 weeks ago, and now we're here with the entire score written. We had to get down to business, look for some strong thematic material, get a sense from the filmmakers of which direction they wanted to go in, and then get immediately to work.
Mother Nature can only be fooled so much.
Here we go.
Deploy my weapon, and your enemies, however great, will collapse from within. Rather like Mr. Moses collapsing right.
Transmitting emotion with music for film. You have, in a sense, a kind of vocabulary. Certain things that are communicated through activity, through motion. There are certain emotional impulses that are communicated through scope, which is actual sonic range. Low notes, high notes, low notes, high notes together. The composer has to converse with the film, has to watch a scene, has to have a response to it. And all of these musical tools are then at the composer's disposal. The orchestra, I've been here to work with before, and they're just spectacular. Their energy level, their willingness to kind of ride along this crazy wave of cinematic recording with all its last-minute changes. Well, are we listening to this stuff back live? Or we can? Let's just put it in now. The director really doesn't hear the full impact and design of their score until they're in the recording studio. And very often, there will be spontaneous changes and needs that arise. Something isn't big enough, something isn't small enough, something doesn't hit exactly where the director would like it. And so you have to then go out and start to make all of these adjustments. Starting in bar 35, then, we're going to add the rest of our bars. That chord, once again, the C-sharp minor triad will be 4 bars long. Let's start that softly with a crescendo. We're rolling. Jan's very clear about what he wants for his film and is very articulate about that. He really understands well that the composer is another performer in the film process, and I felt that I knew a great deal about what he was hoping for in his score.
Any action we did needed to be hard, tough. And, you know, we were trying to do things differently.
There's a lot of great action sequences in this. If you're playing Lara Croft, you know, you want to involve yourself in some of the stunts at least, and yet she wants to do everything.
Of course, it's unique for any director to find an actress who is not only willing, but will love to do all the stunts herself, which is something I like and I always have been doing.
You really believe that this is a character who's sort of, you know, dedicated, without any sort of superpowers as such, as not unlike Angelina, had to undergo, you know, sort of immense amounts of training.
Glastonbury was just too easy. So many of the fights were too easy for me, and also she's more of a lady, which is nice, which I think I love the warrior side of her and the side that's dirty and crazy, and I obviously identify with that side of her.
No, we did some pretty hairy stuff on the first one, and Angelina came out of it in one piece still, so I think she trusts us.
Having worked with her before, it was just that you knew what you could and couldn't do, really. You know, she wants to get involved with everything, and really sometimes you need to rein her back because she wanted to do everything, and obviously insurance-wise, she's not allowed to.
One of the most challenging things we did was we had to have Angelina and Jerry coming down on these ropes, supposedly from this Chinese cave where they got all these terracotta warriors all stored, which sounded pretty easy until Yam wouldn't come down head first.
Makes for this incredible escape, which is very different as, you know, not many people dive out of a cave, head down a rope, and trying to fight their way out.
That was fun. That was probably one of the more exciting days on the film.
She's literally dropped head first down over the cliff, and it stops 3 feet above the ground.
Bearing in mind that they had to stop like 2 foot from the ground, that was part of the scene. We built 3 big mechanisms at the top and had computerized winches controlling their descent, and also a 3rd mechanism so that we could have a camera tracking down with them as they actually went down.
I do love heights, and like I said, I don't love being under the water, but you could put me anywhere and high, and I'm happy.
She was great. I was always turned around and she's smiling and, you know, so graceful and elegant.
I take my hat off to Angelina and Jerry. It was a real courage, a lot of courage that took.
Worst thing I've ever done.
The dropping and just being lifted upside down, and you can see so much space and so much. And when we hit the top, usually we'd hit the sun, and you'd suddenly be. It was beautiful. That was great. It was more just you trying to shoot. I think I was more just aware of being able to accomplish what I had to accomplish. The height and all the dropping was fun, but knowing you have to shoot, and Jerry has to shoot, and he was shooting sideways, and I think, nearly shot me once, because a bullet went like that, because he kind of spun.
She was excellent. I mean, it didn't faze her at all. And it would faze most people, including me.
I mean, obviously you're a little bit more aware that there is only one Angelina, but there maybe are other stunt people. But no, I mean, everything we do, we test, rigidly. It's a real program of testing and retesting and changing things.
We tested, tried, every possible scenario before an artist, or say Angelina in this case, would ever get on a rig.
I'm extremely appreciative of the actors that they were willing and able to do that for 2 days, because it was very hard to shoot with amazing camera rigs we had to build. The cameras falling at the same speed as they were. I was there was very little complaining.
We just had to do it time after time after. I mean, after two shots, I was on the floor crawling. I was like, oh my God. And we ended up doing it, I don't know, over 40 times over a couple of days.
Try to imagine hanging upside down for 2 days. I think 10 seconds about max she can do.
I thought I was going to puke.
Jerry got a little sick here and there from hanging upside down.
But, as she was willing to do it, you've got to take your hat off. He did it. And like I say, most people would not like that at all. He did extremely well.
But even the stunt guys were saying to me, this is something that even stunt guys hate to do. They said, we've tried it, it's horrible. We're not going to lie to you.
But it's fantastic. I think it's a really unique scene. And it's again, and that is what makes this movie so amazing, is the incredible variety that's in the action. We had this in this movie, we had the sequence they had to escape from the building. How do you escape? And it's many things are written, and by a motorbike, by car, a foot race, a bus. And I thought, oh God, we've seen all that before.
Well, the idea came up when I was in America. Like I say, I saw these base jumping videos and free flying videos just with wearing these suits. The idea just came to us that it'd be great to do it in Hong Kong.
Sky flying, it's like parachuting. But there's this new thing that's been invented that you have a suit, and the suit, I think it's like a flying squirrel.
What the difficult thing was going to be is having 2 people fly together from a very low height and be safe, and us be able to film it. So in the end, I came across this team from Sweden that are used to jumping together.
So we got these 2 crazy Swedish guys who were some of the inventors of this particular suit.
And that's what we needed. We needed 2 people, but we also needed a 3rd person who could actually film them. And they needed to be extremely close together, use the wingsuits, and fly in close formation.
Of course, this is the only time that we had to use stunt doubles, because I would never allow. Although she was willing, she was up for a game too. She said, "No, I want to do. No way you're going to do this. Absolutely not."
When we was told that we need to scout for a tall building, So we started looking into buildings, But for this one, at the very beginning, we don't have much hope about this. But then after we contact the people there, and they're very nice, and we start to explain to them what we want to do there.
Bingo.
I think this is the third tallest building in the world, and then I think it's more than 1,000. I'm not quite sure, Toby.
I think it's about 1,200 feet.
1,200 feet. Yeah.
Let's back up a tiny little bit, getting a little too close to me.
Yeah, that's all right.
I like all that stuff, but there are a few people in this film that have height issues. We were all worried for them, and there was a few very, very nervous people with sweaty palms walking around. But
Me being afraid of heights, I was actually the first one. I was holding on like crazy. Once you get to the top, you look down on every other skyscraper in the town. It was like really a little freaky, to be really honest.
The job we do now is we take wingsuits and fly over the city of Hong Kong.
Right, you go first.
No, you go first.
Just to get the shots of speed with the wingsuits flying out. And they turn left and go out over the water to get on the freighter later on.
I mean, we did the jump from 1,000 feet, and they opened their parachutes just above 200 feet, which is extremely low. They would hit the ground. If they hadn't opened their chutes, they'd have probably hit the ground in a second to a second and a half. Your heart was in your mouth when you're watching them, and they're flying so fast. They're not just dropping, they're flying forwards. It's an amazing sight to see.
So they were doing this over and over again, which is an amazing accuracy, and I was scared to death. My God, they're gonna, we're high, but nevertheless,
We basically did 28 jumps in all. We did 8 jumps from the building, and then we did other jumps from the helicopter right over Hong Kong, so that we would give height for the wingsuits to actually start working.
Jump us away, jump us away. We start to jump at 5,000 feet, and it takes a while before the suit's working fine. And then we go down to approximately maybe 1,000 feet or less.
They literally flew in between these buildings. Great, it was like 2 jet fighters. They did a 90-degree banking turn in tight formation and just zipped across and went out to sea. And it was great.
It's not only 2 stunt doubles who did it, it's also the cameraman who had to follow them. And that poor guy who has this heavy camera on his head. And each time you make that jump and you open your parachute, you get this major shock, and this whole weight, boom, settles down on your shoulder. And sometimes make for a hard landing as well, as we see. They did a couple of tough landings, but it looks... There's no visual effect. All what you see on the screen is reality. It's totally real. Nothing added to it. This is really those people flying over Hong Kong. Down with buildings right down below. It's no trickery. And that, I think, makes it also spectacular. It's like sometimes you use visual trickery, and this time there's nothing.
Well, you've set a certain standard on the first one, and now you've got to take it further. It's very difficult, but you've got to come up with new sequences, and you've got to pressure everyone to try and do it differently.
How's that?
I think there probably isn't any other actress in the world who could play this part any better than Angelina. And I think she has an edge to it, which is really the edge she has in life. She also portrayed it in this movie. She's able to really, put everything in her body. She's so always aware of what she's doing.
That was nice.
Even in the midst of hanging upside down, she's still always acting. It doesn't matter whatever you put her in. Horse riding, flying, it doesn't matter. She's always so aware of what she's doing that she will always give the best performance.
In terms of action movies, I've never been so excited about one that I've worked on. It has this epic, mysterious feel to it.
It's not just a similar, there's no repetition whatsoever. Every scene is totally different. Quite amazing, the mixture we were able to put into this movie.